Hello, you're listening to the K12 Tech Podcast, bringing you insights into the world of education technology. Stay tuned as we discuss the past, the present, and most importantly, the future of technology in our schools. Today's episode, we'll be tuning into a conversation I recently had with Pete Just, Chief Technology Officer for the Metropolitan School District of Wayne Township in Indianapolis, as we looked back at March and how this large district took on all the various challenges of the pandemic. So let's tune in now.
But we didn't have enough devices to take care of those primary students because 5 or 4 in a room doesn't take care of the 20, 22 students that might be in there, right? So there's a problem. The students went home in 2 days. We didn't have time to get their Chromebooks out of the carts or know that they were charged, or we had to get the adapters out of the carts. So that took us a couple of days. And so what we really were doing was we were doing a system where the parents were picking up packets, and we called it packet distribution. And we eventually wove in, your Chromebooks could be picked up when you pick up your packets this week. So we did get the Chromebooks out that were in carts, but we were short on all the preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade devices, and we didn't have anything for the high school. So we, in the month of April, we had a program that we had been running for probably 14 years called Bridging the Gap. And basically what we did with that program was we said, hey, look, we've got a bunch of 5-year-old computers. They don't work well on the network anymore, but you know what? They probably, if we loaded up some freeware, took them back to their original OS, we can give them to you. And so the board approved that, 15 years ago or so. So we had been doing that. And then when we started using Chromebooks, we had started at either 3 or 4 years, basically Bridging the Gap was a part of the Chromebook program too. So if you were in high school or in junior high, after 3 years, that became part of your family, if you will. And in elementary school, where they were in carts and we got an extra year or so out of them, after 4 years, they would become part of Bridging the Gap. So we did have some of those out in the community, and we had a number of other devices in carts, and we started giving those out to high school students, and specifically targeting seniors, because we didn't want our seniors to fall behind in the spring. So we had set up basically some lines to do. Our high school is either the biggest or the second biggest, depending on when renovations happen on any given year. High school in the state, the largest high school in the state, let's just say. So we have a lot of doors, a lot of drives that go by different areas of the school, and we chose several of those to do a repair exchange program for students that had devices where we had hardware breaks, and we basically took that broken device, gave them another one, and basically just did an exchange because that was fast. And we would do typically anywhere from 70 to 250 of those in a 3-hour period. Then at another door, if you were a senior, we would give you a Chromebook, or it was an older laptop that had a cloud-ready OS on it, and we would give that to you, and that was just yours to do your work with. And so we slowly started finding ways to repair devices that were broken so that students could stay engaged with the online components, and then slowly started getting things out the door to the high school students. So in a nutshell, that all kind of was an evolution of how we could support our students. And of course, the ones that were broken, we worked with you guys at K12 Tech to get those repaired, and then those went back into rotation to be exchanged. So that sort of summarizes how the spring went. I'll pause for a minute.
Yeah. So I want to break up a little bit of what you said, and the big thing, and one thing I really loved about what you guys did was your guys' organization of getting these new students that are working from home, getting them hotspots. So can you explain how that worked? Did that come through the state? Did you work with another company to get those for the parents? How did that work?
Yeah, so for hotspots, we applied to a program 3 years ago called the Sprint 1 Million program and received several hundred hotspots. but that was limited only to high school students. So we have a ninth grade center. We've got Ben Davis High School and Ben Davis University High School. And those students at those three schools were able to take advantage of that program over the last 3 years. So they were pretty well equipped. We actually noticed that quite a few of them didn't always get activated. So they might have been taken as spares in case they needed the hotspot when theirs gave out or something. Um, and then through the course of the end of the spring and through the summer, there was an organization that started here in Indianapolis called the Indianapolis E-Learning Foundation, or E-Learning Fund, I mean. And that really was a group of entrepreneurs and donors who really wanted to try and provide that access to students here in Indianapolis. So they brought together all of the CTOs in the city. So there's 12 of us, and they said, how can we help you? And we said, well, we need hotspots ASAP. Number one, we can't find them. Number two, we can't afford them.
Yeah.
So how can you help us? And so we put out an RFP. T-Mobile won that RFP. That was RFP number one. And then we said, and what would be really great is if we could have some sort of citywide Wi-Fi network. And so we put out an RFP on that. And that got a little bit difficult, as you can imagine, if you understand much about that, what that would take from both a political and a technical perspective. It's a massive undertaking. So we knew that was a couple of years. So we're still hoping something will happen with that. We did receive bids back on that, but we really didn't take action on that and haven't at this time. But what we did get was a great deal from T-Mobile as a cellular provider, and so now I have 1,000 hotspots. I think as of this morning, 780 of those were requested. So we have the ability to get 2,200 of those should we need them.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I remember, yeah, you guys were the first district to close down. I actually remember I was in Waco, Texas, in the middle of March, and I was there on vacation and everything shut down while I was there. Wasn't even sure if I was going to make it back, and then I got back, and we're getting emails from every school. What do we do? And it was just a time where there wasn't like standard operating procedures for something like this. It was just like, what are you going to do? Do the best we can. And I really appreciated your guys' response in a lot of these areas, understanding that some of your students don't have Wi-Fi, and then also the device situation. So over the summer, you guys ended up having to buy quite a few new units so that you could get devices to each one of your students for deployment. So my question on that was, you obviously had some students that didn't come back to school. How did it work for deploying your new units to students at the beginning of this school year? So obviously you've got devices that are too old that need to be replaced and students that are in school coming back. But then on the other side, you had about 3,600 students that were weighing at home. So how did you guys facilitate that in getting the devices switched and getting them to the right students as you deployed this year?
There's a lot of logistics involved there that we probably can't get into, but our approach as we were going through that process of the spring was also to start up. Our cabinet is really great, and our superintendent is fantastic, and our board supports us so well. But we pulled together as leaders, and we said we need to develop committees. So we developed 7 committees, and those 7 committees dealt with everything from how do we keep students engaged to what do we do on the hardware side to, what do we do with social emotional health. These 7 areas kind of covered what we thought would be the key areas that we need to understand more about. So they came back with a report, and part of that was, look, we can't maintain the models we used to have anymore. The world's changed, and so therefore we need to buy tablets for pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade. We need to buy, additional Chromebooks to support those students in the high school. So essentially, we're going to go fully one-to-one for everybody from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade. Now, we have allowed students to bring in their own devices probably for the last 8 or 9 years because some students have preferences like that. But we also know that we have a high degree of poverty in our district. And as a result of that, we need to provide devices and access as best we can. So I think 5,050 tablets were ordered, and I ordered, I think, as a total of, I mean, another 7,000 Chromebooks, and those all were distributed the first couple of, well, it took us about a month to get them all out to students. But by the time, we hit the end of that month, just because the volume was so huge, we do a lot of things on our own, but we like to partner with people that can help us to make that smoother. And so between your team at K12 Tech and our team at MSD Wayne, we were able to get those distributed, I think, pretty quickly. And I was really happy that we received them all, because I still know people that are waiting now in November for stuff they put orders in on, in May.
Yeah. Yeah. So for everybody that's listening right now, this is towards the second third of November, and um, I would say about 70% of the schools that ordered new devices have not received them yet. And with delivery dates as late as February. So that was really shocking when we got that, like, hey, reached out to us, hey, we're buying 8,000 new devices that we're going to ship to you. We need them ready in 3 weeks. And it was very fortunate, I feel like, after seeing where we are now currently. But that was a really hard couple of months over the summer, just not even knowing if stuff's going to be delivered on time, and there's a lot of coordination on both sides. So I guess one of the final questions I have is, we're getting into the winter months. Obviously, COVID is spiking again. Now you're 100% at home again. What's changing for you guys as you're engaging with your students in technology right now? What are you doing to adapt to that?
Well, we've been preparing for this through the summer, because we were eventually going to hit at least a cold season, if not a rebound of COVID. And the cold season would then bring about, a need to keep people at home, because it's kind of hard to tell whether that's a cold or COVID, right? So, and most importantly, staff. When you have a staff member quarantined, essentially, that's 14 days. You need a sub. You need to have some way for them to show up, so to speak, in the classroom. All our teachers have Chromebooks as well as the PC on their desk, so they could take the Chromebook home. But you need a sub. And so, one of the things we did early as we started the year was we started a fully online school, which was something parents could opt into. We called it Wayne at Home. We were really surprised that almost 25% of our parents chose that option. And so that also meant those students have to have Chromebooks, and we have to support them when they're at home. Well, gosh, we've never done that before. So we started to figure out how to do that. We put out frequently asked questions so people could help themselves. We empowered teachers with some, flow charts of here's what to do if this, then that. Just a 30-second triage type of a thing, because some things are so simple you can solve it in 30 seconds or a minute and move on, as opposed to trying to bring it someplace and waste hours. So a simple triage option, and then you also had the real deal hardware problems. I mean, something fell down the stairs and the screen's cracked. And so between doing a chat support online to help kind of work through those issues, and then also working with your team to do what we call a front porch pickup drop off loaner program and repair program, we were able to really support those students. So now, as we shift into when everyone's remote again, we've had to kind of rethink this just in the last week. We've been closed about a week and a half, basically because, number one, in Marion County here in Indianapolis, those COVID numbers are up through the roof. They've almost tripled. So the Marion County Health Commissioner said, you're all going to be closing by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing, we really had a problem like a lot of schools do. We can't find subs. And so we can't staff our buildings. And so for those two reasons, we had to shut down and go remote. And then to be able to support those students, we still have staff in buildings. All our teachers are teaching from their classrooms. Our administrators are in their offices, and our tech support personnel are in those buildings. so we can support those teachers and make them successful. And then if a student has a broken device, we're working out this process of like, hey, bring it into the school. We're going to do the triage up front, kind of like what K12 Tech does on the front porch. Those folks are comfortable coming into the school. We'll do that there at the front desk. We'll give them a loaner and kind of the same type of program, just now dispersed among all 17 of our schools.
Yeah, and it's funny. We've been operating this business for 9 years, and you kind of get used to the day to day of like students are in schools, and you kind of get used to this. Like these are the things I'm going to see, and this is how many I'm going to see of them. And it's been unique seeing devices be at home more and being used at home. How the breakages are different.
Right.
One thing is funny is it's not really breakages that are spiking, it's spills. Like it's drinks being spilled on it. And it's just funny thinking through, like I always like to imagine like, oh, like what happened to this device? And it's just like, oh, people are just snacking like they aren't able to at school and all these different things. So it's funny as we go through these changes, just how the actual environment the device is in is going to change the condition it's in at the end of the life, which that's going to be interesting as this continues over the next couple of years. So, from beginning, when COVID started to now, and seeing kind of like into the future, do you have any advice for schools and tech directors specifically on what are some important things, if you had to like really sum it up, what are some important things that they could be doing right now to prepare for the winter season, potential closings, and then just making sure that the students are equipped at home?
I think the biggest thing, Zach, is to be observant, and then to be a good listener. I like to come up with solutions, and I think I know the problem. But at the end of the day, if I solve a problem that doesn't exist, I've wasted a lot of energy and a lot of time,
Yeah.
and maybe a lot of money. So to be observant of what are you hearing? Have ears to the ground, and what are you hearing from your teachers? What are they struggling with? Understanding what are best practices. I think those things, when put against each other, really help you to provide the best kind of support and the best kind of educational opportunities, best professional development. So I think that's my biggest thing I've really understood is to be observant, try to find the opportunity that is really there, and then to kind of put it out there and then listen for the reverb of like, is that really a problem? And how can we help with that? People won't always know how to answer the how can I help question because they don't know what the options are.
Yeah.
But we need to be that interpreter that can kind of help make what their problems are go away and try to meet their needs so that they can teach better because there are some obstructions that we need to get out of the way and there are some tools that we need to provide. And I think being observant and listening is a pretty big key.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Pete, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it and appreciate your time. Um, and for anybody listening, if you have any questions specifically, please reach out. And we have a team of tech directors that we work with and partner with, and we'd love to kind of create some SOPs for people that they can go like an FAQ almost for schools that maybe don't have this figured out yet, or just could use some help in some of these areas. So I really appreciate it, Pete.
Thanks a lot. Always a pleasure.
All right, thanks, Pete.